has he run into a lot of officers that are supportive, or even a couple officers that are supportive? And I ask this because I know that when I first started as an officer, it was totally us against them. And you're, I mean, the what you were taught, and especially if you don't have, I didn't have any background in this. So I'm like, ooh, I got to listen to everything they say. They know. And you're not taught, hey, if you have someone that's trying to change, this is the steps you go through with them. You're taught, you take as much as you can. If you can take someone to segregation, awesome. That's a win for the day. If you can write people up. In fact, if you're not writing people up, you're not doing your job. And just, it is warehouse. It's crazy because the officers who were thought of as, they've got it figured out, because no prisoners really go and talk to them. They're not bothered. They just come to work, collect their paycheck, do their job, and they don't really have to deal with the prisoners. Those were the ones that were thought of as they're it. That's what you want to be. Instead of, there was never really, until Dean Williams came in and went to Norway and kind of looked at that whole thing, there was never the idea of, we should be mentors. If someone wants help, there's that verse in the Bible that talks about being as harmless or as wise as serpents, but as harmless as doves. So it's not like you're a dumb, naive officer. Just, okay, I'm going to believe whatever you say. You learn, but you're not there to hurt people. You need to be there to, if for no other reason, and I put this in the book, is they're going to be your neighbors. Most people are going to get out. Why do we do this? Why do we not have officers that are looking for the Carls who want to change, or even the Joshes who, a lot younger, I don't know his backstory, but I imagine he doesn't come across as someone that had a strong father figure, someone that because I was there when Josh was there. I was at Spring Creek, and he's someone that I feel like if a strong officer or someone would have taken him under, and there's many like this, would have taken them under their wing, man, what they could do for them. But if you do that, boy, you are all of a sudden, are you bringing in drugs? Why are you talking to prisoners so much? You must be bringing in something, instead of, you're doing a good job. Look at the change in this person. So anyway, I'm just wondering, did Carl find those officers? Did he have some people that were there helping him out? It sounds like he might have, but there's some that do come up to him and just like are saying to him, wow, I just, I've been doing this a long time. And he said that one of them came up to him just recently and was like, pulled him aside, and he's like, dude, I just want to let you know that I've been listening to some of the stuff that you say to these youngsters and how they follow you, and you're like, people really listen to you. And he goes, it's just really refreshing to see, because he is a huge influence. He's a huge influence to, even he's a RSAT graduate, so he's on the RSAT floor, so he can go in and talk like a mentor. And so he's seeing all the new people come in, and a lot of them are youngsters that are involved in gangs. And so, of course, they're going to they all know who Carl is, lowdown is what they call him. They all know who he is. And then and then my husband, he just goes in and has these conversations, and there's officers that Carl doesn't even know that they're hearing what he's saying. But my husband gets real and he talks the lingo. He's like, hey, dog, just stuff like that. And of course, those youngsters are going to listen to him because he relates to them in that aspect. And these officers pull him aside afterwards and just like, wow, it's just really refreshing to see someone like you really change your life. And this is why
I got into this work. He goes, I know that not everybody does, but he goes, this is why I got into this work, because I wanted to see stuff like this and I wanted to make a difference.
Yeah, that is not something you hear very often.
I know.
I certainly didn't.
No, Carl was like, he's like, Dave, you got to believe this. And he called me and he had to tell me. And it was just like, he didn't even know the officer had heard him having these conversations with these young kids, you know. And so, and then he had, one of the higher ups that he's had conversations with a couple times that have come in. One of them, they all showed up out at Wildwood, and one of them pulled him out of the barber because they went to go look at the barber thing. And one of them pulled him out, and he goes, man, he goes, explain to me why you gave up your parole and your furlough. He's like, and they just are like totally blown away. And I think that they're seeing finally that he was sincere and that all they had to do was give him an opportunity years ago. And that all of this stuff could have been, all the other things that, happened along the way could have been prevented. When the moment he said, before I even got with him, he'd been asking for help, like all the way back to 2005, if they would have just listened to him then and gave him an opportunity, then all that other stuff could have been prevented. But, maybe this time, and I really believe this in my heart, that my husband will be one of the catalysts that will change things in regards to how things are done inside the institution, because what my husband did is very rare. Somebody that was a gang leader that did all the programs and is walking out of prison with a degree. It's very rare. And so if they don't take a look at that and really want to ask him, how did you do it and how can we do better? Then that it's not about rehabilitation, that it's just about a paycheck and, the union and, getting all these benefits instead of like making a difference. Because, there's a saying that, he's the founder of Just Leadership, and his name is Glenn E. Martin. And one of the things that he says is that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest from the resources. And if you really want change, you need to be inviting people with lived experience to the table, because this is a team effort. That's why I really appreciated the fact that Dean Williams, and then obviously, Bill Lipinskis was really, I had my secretary email Bill Lipinskis years and years ago and said, hey, we're looking to do some outreach for people incarcerated, and and she just introduced herself, and then she said, and then I just want to let you know that our founder, she's this and this and this, and and she's in a relationship with this person, but she's really trying to make a change. And I guess 2 minutes later, after she sent that email, Bill Lipinskis responded and said, I don't care who she's in a relationship with. I need people like her coming to the institution. And so that's when I started coming to the prison, because I was like, finally, we have somebody that gets it, and then that's when I started meeting all of you guys and sitting down with the groups and then having these conversations. We had the community and unity meetings. That's when I met Liberty, and people coming from the outside coming in and having these conversations. The brilliant idea of Bill, having the guys dress in civilian clothes and making it to where it was about being a neighbor rather than like first class citizen and a second class citizen, or free citizen and incarcerated citizen, but that we're all humans, and that in order for this to work, we all have to come together. And so I hope eventually that we can come back to that, and it all comes down to leadership, and then also I think something that really stands out to me is, my friends are the ones that produced that Breaking the Cycle documentary They're doing another one in Pennsylvania. I've been on panel with a couple of times with both of them. They live over in the Nordic countries. John and Thomas is their name, and they've like shown what it really looks like to do some Nordic training. Well, the Little Scandinavia project really brought light to my eyes on the training of officers. You know, like you were saying, is they're trained to believe that we're the enemy and that we're all liars and we're all manipulators and that we all should be treated as such. And there should be no kind of like human contact or kind of conversation or, you know, playing video games or anything like that. And the whole idea when these officers went to the Nordic country to get trained so they could try to like do a pilot project in Pennsylvania, their response when they first got there was like, oh no, weapon. How can I sit down with somebody in solitary confinement and play video games and have a conversation? Or it's so unreal that I would sit down and have a meal with somebody. And then when they brought it back to Pennsylvania and started the project and they all sat down and had a meal together, they all specifically said, if I would have done this outside of doing this project, I would have been fired. They would have been fired for it. You know,
I watched that, what you're talking about. And there's such a big part of me that's so, when things change, which they will again, but I want to start at Spring Creek because I know the guys there. I know a lot of them. I know a lot of them that are going to be there for a long time. And man, I would love to have that point. I mean, when we had the Christmas party and stuff and things were just kind of starting, it was like, first of all, it cracks me up because as officers and people who think, oh, if you're doing anything, then you're going to want to marry him. You're going to want to have a relationship. You're going to want to bring in drugs. Wow. You must think that officers are really, really stupid and can't think for themselves, because if you believe that nobody can pick up on what manipulation is and when someone's being real, and also give the grace for the times that you might get duped. Who doesn't get duped in life? We all get manipulated, but we learn from it. Both sides learn from it. And the thing is it should be offensive to people, to officers, that, oh, well, if you talk to them too much, they're gonna get you to bring in drugs. You think that I'm that, like, wow,
right?
I must not have anything up here to be able to fight any of that with. I'm just so naive and so weak that I'll just start bringing in drugs and I'll think of them as my friends. And actually, you know what was interesting is when I really got a really good feel for how ludicrous that whole thing was, that whole idea that how are you going to be a figure of authority if you're also, being friendly with them? Well, parents do it all the time. When I married my wife and all of a sudden had kids, I was like, it's funny because one minute we can be playing a board game and the next minute, if one of them like hits the other one, all of a sudden I'm the authority figure and I'm taking care of it. There's no, oh, well, I've been playing games. I better not say anything. I can't say anything. That's just dumb. It's dumb. It's like, I'm not that stupid. And I don't think a lot of people are that stupid. And I think, there's books that are written about, oh, be careful. Anytime a prisoner's nice to you, they're trying to set you up. And it's just like, look, I know I would tell the prisoners, this is my guideline. I have ethics. I will not cross into this. So if that's what you're here to try and do, knock it off. I had prisoners. I had some that would come up and be like, hey, McCarty, you realize that if you brought a zip drive with porn in, you could get a lot of money. And I think I put it in the book. It's hard to remember all this stuff, but that I went into the office and talked to some of my fellow officers, and I came back in and was like, so I talked to my fellow officers and they said I should charge you about $1 million. And they're like, what? I said, I told you, I'm not here for that. I'm here to help you guys. And it's just stuff like that. But yeah, it's like, I remember thinking that anyone who would marry a prisoner, anyone who would, I would say the first 4 years were just, I was very inundated with the teaching of DOC, of these people they're worthless. You don't want to see them on the street. You don't. And I was just like, man, these are, after about that 4 years, it just me started coming through, and I was just like, I can't, these people are going to get out. And you start seeing how ridiculous it is that, yes, we warehouse them. And then you take I had an officer tell me actually way back when Carl was in SCCC, I'm not going to say names, but it was around the time that people thought that he had put a hit out on an officer. That time I'd had an officer come up and say, man, that guy is so charismatic, and just, if he could just turn the gang lifestyle into doing good, he just has that thing where people will follow him, people will listen to him. And but man, most of DOC that I know doesn't want to give people the chance for that. So I'm super happy that he has found those people. And I've worked with some. I'm not saying every single officer's, because I've worked with some who very, very much care about people. But man, you have to be so careful, because I was accused of, oh, you're bringing stuff in for them. And I had a memo from Bill Lipinska saying that I could bring in this stuff. And still people were like, well, I'm afraid you're getting manipulated. Well,
it's the training.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's the training. So if we could get, in the Nordic countries, you cannot work as in corrections unless you have a behavioral health degree. You have to, and that's why they have such a low recidivism rate. I mean, it's like, that would be, it totally makes sense. You know what I mean? And if somebody wants to work in corrections, it doesn't take much to take classes on being trauma informed, getting your CDC-1. If you got a CDC-1, if you're becoming a chemical dependency counselor, even if you are not an addict yourself, but getting your CDC-1, that's starting to understand, okay, well, I'm starting to see this is how I can, help this individual. We're starting to recognize some of the things that are, that I learned in my training, even getting a peer support training, even if they got a peer support certificate, being a peer support specialist, starting there. But in that, I think that it's important to bring individuals that are successful back into the prison, and stop believing that everybody's that's been to prison or a convicted felon trying to do ill things or bring dope in. Do you think that I want to go back to prison? Hell to the no. That was my last prison set. And not just that, I still got time hanging over my head if I ever got in trouble. They can give me they can give me 8 years that was suspended, and my 20 years is not up. I'm still on the hook for that. So if I was ever get in trouble, they could go back and give me those 8 years that they suspended. So do they really not think